Again, that is the title track of the Michael Jackson album, Dangerous, as we are taking today's program with our many commemorations to also acknowledge his 60th birthday this past Wednesday and the influence that the King of Pop had on the world, how we miss him, and as we are watching the homegoing celebration for our late Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin, as well. Our thoughts today are very deeply rooted in how do we pass along a sense of legacy to these rich cultural traditions that have been given to us by some of the best who are no longer with us, and how are we representing them in our continued pursuit of new creative outlets, whether we're talking about documentary film space, whether we're talking about theatrical stage, whether we're talking about recordings. There is a responsibility that we have to continue looking for opportunities to carry this history forward. And we know that that will be very much rooted in the speaking and the singing that we see happening at Greater Grace Church today as this marathon homegoing celebration for Aretha Franklin takes place, but also in our conversations with other purveyors of the artistry that will be a part of today's Reelblack Radio. And Mike D is in the house.
Indeed. I mean, are we going to get one of these every year? It's almost like a year to the day of Dick Gregory's marathon funeral service.
And I was telling people when we began today's program that Michael Jackson's memorial service, I could not have sat there in rapt attention for the whole thing because I would have been able to stop crying. Like, I had to have it on in the background and have it open on a tab on the computer and come back to it as I could, because it was so heavy. And it was so emotional. And that's how a lot of people are feeling today, looking at this celebration for Aretha.
Yeah, I know we have a guest, John Holiday's on the line with us. I mean,
not yet.
Not quite yet. We're waiting for him to call in.
Yes.
But I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, look, we're never going to see talent on this level ever, just because the nature of developing talent, success has changed so much. It's so, like, a lot of these people, before you even heard a lick of a recording of Aretha Franklin or Michael Jackson, they'd toured for years, night after night.
Right.
She was on the gospel highway and all this other stuff. So, it still takes a certain amount of time to develop the talent.
Yes.
Not to say that talent isn't being born every day, but to get artistry at the level of Aretha Franklin or Michael Jackson.
But so the work ethic and the training are incredibly important as a part of that conversation. But it also goes to the fact that they were born into families where developing that talent was a natural part of the way they were parented. Right. And we can argue about methods and everything else, but Aretha being born to Reverend C.L. Franklin was incredibly meaningful in terms of how she was given access to develop that talent, even as a supplement to her father's preaching.
Right.
But it was an expectation that once she showed musical promise, that she was going to be raised up in that musical promise in the church.
Right. And that's not to say, people listening, that your kid isn't the next Michael Jackson. I'm just saying, Michael Jackson, the child labor laws prevent another Michael Jackson from happening. Those people were in the studio and on the road.
Had the child labor laws been emphasized, he wouldn't have been able to do half the performing he did in the early part of his career anyway.
Exactly. And he recorded like almost 3 full albums of the material before the first one was released. And then also the nature of the Black culture and our art has shifted so much. We're not really borrowing from what was done from the past. We're not taking from gospel. We're not taking from the blues. So what the next hybrid is, we were talking about in the last segment, when you're a copy of a copy of a copy in terms of what influences you, then you're not going to get to the real root of things.
Well, that's the conversation I had with Matthew Knowles earlier today. The idea of what it took for him as a father to leave his 9-to-5 job and say, I am going to spend all of my expertise in sales and marketing to now groom my children for this industry and show them how you not only acknowledge your talent and develop the talent, but that you know how to own it.
Yes.
In a way that is going to benefit the next generation.
Transformative black male. I have to listen back for that interview.
Yeah, and that takes us right into the show We Shall Not Be Moved.
Originality, hybrid.
I mean, so much. I mean, and for those of you in our listening audience who were a part of our word night, you know that before the show, I got a chance to stand in conversation with Val Gay, Michael Bolton, and Mark Bamuthi Joseph, who was responsible for the book of the show We Shall Not Be Moved, and talk to them a little bit about process, about what it took to bring a story that is such a painful, traumatic point in Philadelphia history, but to add some artistry to it and to make it something that would engage a whole new generation of folks who may not have been in Philadelphia or may not have been alive when that fateful day in 1985 happened, and the wonderful performers that were a part of that experience that you captured on video that will be shown on Independence Mall in just a few short weeks.
Yeah, I don't have the date with us. So with us on the line is one of the stars of the production.
Yes.
Welcome back to WRD, John Holiday.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
We are so, well, I can't speak for Mike. I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you today, John, because I can give you now the feedback of the folks who were sitting around me.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready to hear
as we were watching the show. And I got to let you know that every single time you opened your mouth in song, somebody on my row or directly in front of or behind me gasped or cried, or we all just, I mean, literally, we were reaching out and touching each other just to say what a beautiful instrument you have and how your voice and your story as a character in this production was so crucial to many people for the emotional arc of what we experienced as a part of We Shall Not Be Moved. So I needed to share that with you, but I need to know also from your perspective what it was like, and please let everyone in our audience know the kind of character sketch of who you played and why that was so important to the story.
Well, the character, thank you so much, firstly, for having me on, and thank you for the words of support and encouragement, and it just means so much to me. The character that I played was the role of John Blue, and John Blue in this opera is in his teens, and he is a young trans character. He's transitioning from female to male. And so there are so many things psychologically, in my estimation, that are going on during the process of the transformation from being female to male, in the body and in the mind, but also about the way people view you. And so in the opera, you hear John Blue discussing what it's like to be in his body.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of not knowing what his body is, what these feelings are. And I think whether trans or not, I think that so many people have those thoughts, you know, being in their bodies as they are anyway. But to have that feeling and those mental challenges, that come up with the idea of identity. What is his identity? And of course, in this opera, he is one of a 5 group of family with John Blue, and they're being led by Unsung, and they are chosen family, much like so many of us have, like our best friends. But in another way, these teenagers have really clung to each other and formed a family, and so you just get to see this story unraveling in front of you. I personally think it's a story of love. It's also a story of loss, redemption, and it shows what's possible in the world when one has a lot of love to give, but also when one doesn't really know what love is. Mm-hmm. So there's so many things that are going on, and throughout the opera, I was trying my best. Of course, I'm not a trans person. I'm a cisgendered man, so I was born a male. But I do have friends who are trans. And so in my in my own way, I try to do as much research as I could so that I could bring as much authenticity to the role that I could bring to it. But what I wanted to do in the role is to bring an emotional arc to the character from beginning to the end. And in fact, John Blue starts the opera. He's the very first voice that you hear.
Yeah.
So I just felt so privileged to be able to bring the story of We Shall Not Be Moved to Philadelphia. And for me, as you were saying when I was coming onto the to the air, I was born in 1985. So and this history was not taught to me. I'm from Texas. I'm from Houston, Texas, a little city called Rosenberg outside of Houston. And this history was not taught to me. So it was very brand new to me when I started learning about the MOVE bombings 2 years ago. So you can imagine that I was like, oh, it's not real. And I was like, oh, no, it is real. Like, this really happened. So, there's so many different variables that went into it. And I tried to make my character as multifaceted as I could and bring everything that I could along with me. I asked for God to enable me to bring everyone on John Blue's journey. And I'm hopeful that I did. Well,
you did. And what we want to do, one, I just want to say before we play this clip that there is a lot of this incredulity that comes with understanding that this incident really did take place, as you've described, not being from Philadelphia and being born in 85, that this wasn't taught to you, that there are plenty of people who hear about this and their first reaction is that couldn't have happened, because we are not capable of thinking that local government or state government could make such a decision that would have such tragic repercussions in a residential community. We're taught to think that it only happens in extreme circumstances, and that never could have happened in Philadelphia when it did indeed do so. Yeah. And I think, that's why your portrayal, your voice, and the way that you bring us into that space that you just described is that much more meaningful for the people in our Word Radio listening audience who were there that night, who lived through it, because they were able to begin to hear it and feel it from a completely different perspective in your character's voice and characterization. So Mike has a clip from the videotaping that we want to play for people to kind of bring them into that same emotional
folks
space.
Will have a chance. It's a free event, Opera on the Mall, on Saturday, September 29th at 7 p.m. And you can go to operaphila.org to RSVP. Get your free tickets now because they're going to sell out. But here's This Is My Body, John. Coming right there. Should be there.
Wait, Kayla's going to turn it on. All right. So, John, talk to us about your classical training.
Oh, my goodness. It's so funny. I'm sitting here singing along with it. It's just one of the most meaningful operas and roles to date that I've ever done. I'm so thankful that I've done it. I did my undergraduate at Southern Methodist University, School of the Arts.
Yes.
In Dallas, Texas, where I studied with Barbara Hill Moore.
I was going to say a very storied music program.
Oh, yes. And then I, from there, went to the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, which is another fantastic school of music, where I studied with Karen Likes. And then from there, I went to the Juilliard School in New York City, where I studied with Marlena Malice. And have been able to, in between those things, have went to apprentice programs like the Santa Fe Opera, and I was a Celine Young artist at Wolf Trap Opera. So I've done a lot of training that way. But I also, I kind of I called in while you guys were talking about Aretha. So, you know, having that kind of, those influences growing up, especially in my household, were so important to my development. The Clark sisters, Aretha Franklin, you know, so many people listening to have influenced my singing, not just in my opera training, and especially having grown up in the church. So what this opera did in so many ways is that it allowed me to bring to the fore all of the things that had inspired me as an artist, and I get to utilize them in this opera in so many ways. And so I'm so thankful for Daniel Bernard Roumain and Mark Lamucci Joseph for the opportunity to do this, and the incomparable Bill T. Jones.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say this. The whole production took on a life of its own.
Oh yeah.
You know, from you know, for those who don't know, I was following with Reelblack. It started as workshops that Reelblack hosted, and you know, I was filming them, I guess, over the period of 4 years. It developed into this thing that not only took you, you know, to premiere Philadelphia, but at the Apollo, and it's taken on a whole thing. I mean, what's your feeling of being involved with such a thing?
Well, you know, what I didn't mention earlier that I should now is that, you know, along the journey of getting to from the workshop to the stage, we were so involved with knowing the story, so much so that Upper Philadelphia, bless them and everything that they did, they got us to talk with the Renfro family from Osage Avenue. And I believe the Renfro family, they still are the block captains of Osage Avenue. And so we got to sit in one of the homes that was on Osage Avenue, and then we also got to walk past the home on Osage Avenue, which had the incendiary device dropped on it. So being there kind of informed a lot of what I did as well. But being a part of this production has been, as I was saying earlier, so meaningful to me that I get to be a part, because, you know, oftentimes when I'm doing an opera, I'm portraying something that is so far from me, you know, so far removed from me, which I don't mind at all. I enjoy doing that. But what this opera did, it was something that is so present, it's so poignant, it's so important to discuss these topics. And this opera brought all of these really kind of hot topics to the forefront, and in a way that people who were involved in it were unapologetic and, you know, not ashamed about bringing them to the forefront. So I was happy to be a part of that on so many different levels. I can't begin to tell you. I remember being in rehearsal in the workshop period, crying, singing "This Is My Body," and then crying, singing my aria, you know, "A Blackbird Fly, Blackbird Sing." I mean, I have chills right now talking about it. You know, it has been such a fantastic journey, and we've done it also. I have to say, one venue that you didn't mention is that we did it at the Dutch National Opera in Amsterdam.
Yes.
And so that, too, I mean, can you imagine? And the audience there was in love with it. It was like a 5-star review there.
Beautiful.
So it also let me know that this story is something that transcends place. It doesn't just have to be in Philadelphia. You're lucky that it is in Philadelphia, but this story is something that goes beyond that. These kind of injustices are going on all over the world still today, and that's the unfortunate part. So my hope is that with this opera, that it does continue to bring and shed light to these areas that sometimes people like to not shed light on. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So...
Well, you know, one of the other things that I think is really important is a sense of timing, that it took a while to develop this piece and be able to bring it forward. However, you being able to walk in that space on Osage Avenue in the state that it was in when you were able to experience it and have it inform the way that you played this part is now rapidly changing. I don't know if you've heard that a developer has basically bought the rights to redevelop all of the houses on that block. And so they're doing it in conjunction with the council people and the state representatives in that neighborhood. and keeping it moderately priced homes compared to market value. But I'm saying that, 10 years from now, if you come back to that block, the signs of the damage and destruction that was done there, and even the failing homes that were built on that space afterwards, it's going to be completely different. So that your opportunity to be a part of this cast and developing this story at the time you were able to do it really was one of those things that is divine timing and a unique opportunity that will not be the same for people that come along behind you. And so there's another kind of spiritual element to what you were able to bring to the production in real time as well.
Well, I do feel so honored that we got to see it. I had no idea about this new development taking place, so that's interesting to know. But I do feel lucky that and blessed to have been able to step into that moment and to see, because when we were there were still homes, which I thought was even more interesting than the bombing taking place, that there were still homes that were boarded up on Osage Avenue, and it just kind of blew my mind. So I feel we have been such a tremendously blessed production to be able to experience what we've experienced and to learn what we've learned and to work with people who gave of themselves and shared with us their stories.
Right. Well, I mean, life goes on. Now, September 29th is the Opera on the Mall broadcast. I'm not sure. I don't expect that you'll be in Philadelphia that day. But
I might. You never know.
Well, where are you now? I know you continue to work and do things. Yes.
Right now, I'm actually at home. I am in Appleton, Wisconsin, which is where I call home now.
Okay.
But tomorrow I leave for Los Angeles. So I'm on the way to Los Angeles to do some work and to meet with some presenters. Then I come back for a little bit of time, back to Appleton. Then I'm off to, I have to think about it, I'm off to San Francisco to do some work with Mark Bamuti Joseph and YBCA in the area. And then Houston, I'm doing the role of Nerone in Agrippina, which is by Handel. Then from there, I'll go to New York City to work with Master Voices. And then from there, I'll go to Detroit to do Handel's Messiah.
Well, you better be busy in classical.
Then I'm on the way to Taiwan to sing an opera that was also written for me called Paradise Interrupted, which is in Mandarin. So I'll be there for about 2 weeks.
Wow.
And then I'm off for a little bit. Then I have a little break.
Then you have a little break. Yeah, I was going to say, well, just the idea of you being able to take your talent into all of these spaces and share it with eager audiences is really refreshing, because there's so many people who think of our Black presence in some of these spaces as fleeting, and you're showing us that there is hustle to be made even in classical music, where you can continue to share your gifts, and I'm glad to hear it.
Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, keep me in your thoughts and in your prayers, and I also sing jazz and gospel too, so that's another thing.
Well, you'll be back in Philly soon, I'm sure.
Of course.
If not for on September 29th, just to perform, and please come back on and tell us whatever you're up to.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Bye.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, one of the very talented voices, part of the original cast of We Shall Not Be Moved. And if you were not able to join, even if you were able to join us at the Wilma Theater for the original Philadelphia production, you are encouraged to sign up for those free tickets through Opera Philadelphia to see the filming that Mike Dennis helped to supervise of the production, shown on our Independence Mall.
Yeah, right at Independence Mall. And the lead up, there's a whole pre-show prior to that.
Yes.
There's a documentary, the making of, that shows the whole, how it came to be and all that stuff that I also made. So, so please support. If those are Reelblack, make it your duty. Right.
And I guarantee you will be moved by the story and by the music and Mike's expert filmmaking.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So we got to take a quick break, and we'll come back to talk about more of this Black presence in all kinds of cultural spaces when we continue. That, of course, is the voice of the late, great Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin, from her 30 Greatest hits compilation with one of her favorites for those of us who dig into the catalog, Call Me. And many people know the Phil Perry version as well. One of the many people who has remade that song over the years, and he has been posting all kinds of stuff on LinkedIn over the course of the last week.
I should not fail to mention Reelblack. We're going to do for our next month a tribute to Aretha. But there's lots of periods of Aretha. I want to concentrate on the year 1968 because I think that's like right after a breakthrough, respect and everything. And that's to me, I mean, I like Sparkle Aretha. I like Call Me. I like Angel. I like all the 70s and I like Freeway of Love. But that early 60s Jerry Wexler stuff, that's still my favorite.
Well, I'm glad that you brought in this album because I wanted to also share for the people that have listened to the program from the start this morning. I played for you as our Power Up Song of the Day the medley that is included on an album called Oh Me, Oh My, Aretha Live in Philly, 1972. And I just wanted to share information for you all that this album was recorded live at the National Association of Television and Radio Announcers Convention here in Philadelphia. So imagine folks like Mike and I in a convention talking about our respective shows and things that we're doing. And Aretha Franklin is the headliner, and she performs enough material to record a whole live album.
Yeah, this was an album. It was put out by Rhino towards the waning
Shout
days.
out to David Nathan, also part of the reissue. For those who are unfamiliar with him, I want to say his website is soulinterviews.com.
Soulmusic.com.
Soulmusic.com, he does a lot of interviews. He's very, he's been in this industry for a good minute and is making sure that we don't lose the legacy of some of these original recordings and these folks who have been seminal in the development of the sound. Yeah,
he's definitely the go-to person for Aretha and Dion. I mean, all the soul divas is his expertise. But yeah, there are a lot of, just as an aside before we get to our next guest, there are a lot of recordings that happen because of the radio and record industry.
That's right.
Specifically this Aretha CD, which was basically buried in a tape vault. Now, one of the things like pre-1972, there's no Aretha outtakes or anything. There's a huge fire in the Atlanta Records warehouse in New Jersey, and all the masters, unreleased records were destroyed, like the original reels. So the only, like when you get an Atlantic record or Stax and you get those CDs and there's a little bit of hiss on it, it's because they're mastering them from submastered tapes. But also I discovered, it's on my Instagram, I believe it's still posted, but the same time that this was being recorded, Philly International had a convention in San Francisco. So there's a live album that came out maybe 5 years ago. All the, like Harold Melvin, the Blue Notes, and the OJs live in San Francisco. And then one of the earliest live recordings that was released was Ray Charles live. The Genius Live, not the Newport one, but the one before that, it was actually recorded. A DJ, he was performing in Atlanta, and the DJ just had a single tape recorder with one microphone way in the back of the audience. And the system, because it's mono, he just hit record, and that became an album years later. It was one of the first live recordings of a R&B soul act was Ray Charles, and that was a radio DJ in Atlanta. So.
Right. And the way that the legal system has developed around this stuff to help prevent grabbing some of this material now, because in union houses, of course, there are rules for what you can record and not record, and who owns the rights to it and how all of this happens. So when you have an opportunity like Mike does to have this album in your collection, you need to think about the sort of provenance that comes along with it, and how important it is to hear these moments of creation as they were birthed, because there are so many factors that almost prevent us from getting the same kind of authenticity in recordings these
iPhone
days.
has changed all. I was at Aretha's last show here in Philly, which turned out to be her third to last public appearance, and I was shooting with my cell phone. I was just keeping it for myself, but I did share the video on the Reelblack YouTube channel, and I was kind of far away, but the sound is beautiful. She's in fine voice. So if you haven't been over to Reelblack YouTube channel, we did our own Aretha tribute. So we'll have to carry this over into the next break, but on the line with us is a great guy, a filmmaker, Anthony Brogdon, who has a film called Business in the Black, and he's about to embark on an East Coast tour. And I just want to please welcome to Reelblack Radio, Anthony.
Hello, Anthony.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me on.
And you're in Detroit right now, aren't you?
I am, and I must admit, while I'm on the radio and on the telephone talking with you, I'm watching the tribute on local TV.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, we've got the live stream going on our laptops, and CNN is covering it, and we've got that on the monitor. So we are all very much kind of split attention, but still trying to keep ourselves rooted in the culture and the meaningfulness of this culture as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I was fortunate enough on the day of her passing to go by her church. And I got there late where they had a minister speaking, and I got in on the prayer as we closed that service that day, and that was just so touching for me.
Yeah, you're in Detroit. Do you have any direct Aretha stories you want to share? Anything beyond that?
Well, the one story I do have is that when she announced her retirement, that she still kept performing, but there was some announcement here in Detroit, and so they closed off a street. They named it in her honor. And they had a concert, a free concert outside. And I got there early enough to get very close to the stage. And I saw her. She did one or two songs. She walked past me. I got a chance to hug her.
Wow.
I got a chance to take a selfie. The sad part is I dropped that telephone in the water, and I don't have that picture.
Oh,
that was Aretha's mojo. No, you don't want that picture of me.
Oh, man, it's still a memory, I tell you.
Yeah, I have a similar Michael Jackson story I'll share in the next segment. But yeah, Business in the Black. I had a chance to see it in New York last year. We went up to see it when you were at in Harlem, and now you're coming to Philly September 11th at the Yaden Public Library.
Correct.
And then the following day, September 12th in Baltimore, September 18th in Wilmington, Delaware, and on the 19th, East Orange, New Jersey. So this is Business in the Black, the rise of black business in America. Let folks know about it.
Well, it's a documentary that I produced. It was released May 17th and here in Detroit. We had a premiere at the large black museum called the Charles Wright. And then the next week was in New York, and you came to the second show of New York.
Oh, wow.
It was so phenomenal that you were impressed enough to drive up to come. It was held at the Harlem Y. And so what I've been doing since then is I've been touring it around the country, renting theaters, going to libraries, churches, bookstores, so on and so forth, to get the message out. And the message is three things. How did slaves go to college? Because there were HBCUs open before slavery ended. We talk about and we name graduates of universities in the 1800s, and Harvards and Yales and Michigan and Penn and things of that sort. We talk about what racists did to destroy black business districts across the country. And so, understandably, we mention what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but we also mention what happened in so many cities, and it happened here in Detroit, where they ran a freeway right down the middle of the business district.
Right.
And so we name districts and we name freeways that had that devastating effect. And then we name black millionaires. I found one guy who would be worth $20 million in today's terms in the 1800s. I found slaves who bought their freedom, and we hear a number of those stories from Frederick Douglass, and I heard that's what happened with him, and so many others. We named various organizations across the country to help foster and grow, how churches played a role, Booker T. Washington and the National Business League and the growth of black business in the early 1900s. And then I interviewed a number of people whose family owned a business in the early 1900s. For example, I interviewed the sons of a husband and wife team that started a hospital in 1917, or the sons and daughters. It's like 3 or 4 people that's on the executive board whose parents started a cemetery in 1925, or a cab company started in 1928.
Right.
And we go from the 1800s to the 1960s in our examination of the rise of black business in America.
Now that brings up my question. Why does it end in 1960?
Well, it ends, I must admit, between us, I didn't want to get into, and so many people want to talk about what happened to black business. What's the state of it today? And so they go into that discussion if I go even further. So I thought that would be some way to kind of end that, because I don't want to talk about what might be perceived as something wrong when I still believe that black business is flourishing. We're doing much more than we've done in the past. We're more industries, and we're billionaires, multi-millionaires.
But
there are a lot of smaller businesses that don't get recognition but are still very successful. And so that was just, I thought, would be a good ending point.
But the story in 1960, that all the business that you talk about, all the black wealth that we generated, this is all done under segregation.
Correct.
So I mean, what is the difference in your estimation, like in terms of us having our own ownership and things? You explore that. I know you explore it in the film.
Well, the difference, I guess, if you want to say, is that we're now attracting business from other races and doing business in many instances. The difference is the availability of resources that we might not have had back in the day. And it's not that it's mandated because of segregation that we have to work with each other. And so that might make us have to compete and be more, I don't know if the word, more flexible in our offering.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't. I mean, I could have kept going on and on in the chronicle of the film, but right. I did want to just focus on that historical perspective.
So you don't see it as an end of an era, the highways coming in or the desegregation. That did not destroy our community in your perspective.
Oh, no, not at all. And I'm sure in Philadelphia, as I've visited the city over the years, there are pockets throughout the city of black businesses, and some of them aren't even in African-American themed neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And are thriving with white clientele. Be it the various industries that we might be in, and it's not just retail. I mean, it's plumbing. It's
right.
It's a plethora of different things that we do, and are successful at doing it.
Radio station owners.
Yeah, I was gonna say this independent station appreciates that. Shout out, Mike D. But we are glad that you have created a conversation piece, Mr. Brogdon, to be able to bring people out and to talk about the role of black business. Because if we're not talking about how we continue to sustain these businesses long term and looking for them, patronizing them, recognizing them in our midst, then we are losing out on a major opportunity to promote the growth of wealth within our own community. And so if your film at least begins that conversation, then it's taking us in the direction that we need to go.
Oh, yeah. And in many instances, so far in my Q&A, I remember one where a lady stood up. She said, well, if the black folks could operate a business during those times, there's no reason why I shouldn't. And I've been on the fence of doing it, and I'm going to go out and start my own business. And I've had that comment more than once. It's inspirational. What hopefully it does is it allows us to understand the standard, the basis from which we have come in our business community, so that we understand that where we are is growth from that point.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I want everybody to know it's Tuesday, September 11th at the Yaden Public Library. Is there a time there?
It's at 6 o'clock. Yes,
6 o'clock at night,
and it's free to come in. I mean, you know, I want people to see, to hear these stories.
Yes,
yeah, and
I'm doing all I can to make that possible.
And then your Twitter, your website.
The website is businessintheblack.net. The Twitter is A Strong Dream.
Right.
Let me mention one thing before we close. I got a showing September 27th in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, good for you.
Wall Street.
Yes.
And so I'm just, as I am with all the shows, but a little more excited about that. The lady who opens in the pre-reception is the grand niece of the young man at the time, who is accused of raping the white lady in the elevator.
That started the riot. Yeah.
Started the riot.
Wow.
This is how powerful this. I'm calling it a movement now.
Yes.
Because I want to, you know, in some ways influence some people to not complain about what things are, but to look at how great we've been and how great we still are.
Yeah, well, you're out there doing it. Again, traveling the whole country with the film. I encourage people to come September 11th to Yaden or anywhere on the East during your East Coast tour. And it's great. I'm so glad we met, and I'm so happy that you're able to call in today.
I thank you so much for this opportunity. Businessintheblack.net is the website. It's on Facebook. If you don't mind, I say DVDs are available. I made those inexpensive for only $10, and it's streaming on Amazon.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Yep.
There you go.
And there it is. Well, we appreciate you and preserving this history for us, and we hope that you get a great crowd out at Yaden Public Library.
Yeah, I tell you, a great crowd would be one person that told 30 people.
We just did it.
Here it is.
That is the power of radio.
That's it.
Thank you.
So much for
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we got to run to our final commercial break, and we got to conclude today's program. So hang tight for the conclusion of today's edition of Real Black Radio in just a moment. And that, again, ladies and gentlemen, is our final nod to Michael Jackson's 60th birthday in our musical interludes on today's program. Again, from Off the Wall, another favorite of many of us who have determined that Off the Wall is the definitive grown Michael Jackson album, but also that disco sound that was delivered courtesy of
the Brothers Johnson? What?
Brothers Johnson, of course, because of slap bass, which I think we're going to lose if we don't go back and grab that. Quincy's production, but also the white guy from Heat Wave.
Oh, well, not Greg Fillinganes.
No,
but,
you know.
Yeah. Why'd you do that to me?
Because we're watching Aretha's funeral, and so my brain can't do too much at the same time. It's like trying to remember names and references.
He's somebody that passed away that had a big check. You know, I don't know where Aretha's will. Somebody's hiding that will. It's like that scene in Cooley High when Cochise is trying to find his acceptance letter to college. That's where Aretha's will is. You can't tell me she had all that money. She knew she was sick. Come on.
Well,
Stop.
you know.
Rod Temperton.
Thank you. I cannot believe I blank like that. Rod Temperton is the white guy from Heat Wave.
People don't want to hear that.
One of the white guys.
People don't want to hear white people were involved with Michael Jackson's success now.
But the same way that folks didn't know that the guy that sang "What You Won't Do for Love" was white. You know, we just got to make sure that people have their appropriate references to understand that soulfulness comes in all kinds of packages.
Michael Jackson, he co-wrote "We Are the World." Right, so I think we are in a colorblind society. You have to get past the pigmentation.
Here we go.
Of the skin.
I ain't saying nothing about being colorblind. I'm just saying.
Just look deep into the soul. Go see the movie Kin this weekend.
Okay.
Which is I had a chance to see it early. There's an interview with the directors.
Okay.
I told them I was going to go in on them a little bit. I mean, I think, like from a 13-year-old perspective, I think it's a good movie. But I still feel that I have yet to see the film that, as a young kid, I would want to see as a young Black American, because Hollywood, when you have these big budgets, and this is a good film. It's about a 13-year-old kid who discovers a sort of a plasma ray gun.
Oh, we talked about this last week. Yes.
And he ends up on the run with his adopted half brother, who is a ne'er-do-well, and all kinds of stuff happens. And, so you get that representation where you get to see yourself, but then he's adopted. And I told them, it's still like Mr. Drummond a little bit. And he said, yeah, but they're Polish people and they're poor. It's not the same thing as being adopted by rich white people. Still, like,
really
we don't get it. When you put that in with Wrinkle in Time this year, I still have yet to see black people in a nuclear family solving problems or having adventures or anything. So I encourage people who are listening or making films or telling stories, please, I want to see that story. I want to have that because that's still something I didn't grow up with too often, and it's still something that we don't see enough of. Right. Where we get adventures where there's a strong nuclear family. I mean, also shout out to the making of The Five Heartbeats. I hope that gets a wider view, because he had all this. It was an amazing film. He shows all this rare footage, rehearsals. Robert Townsend, all the people that didn't get the jobs. Lots of interesting like videos of people that are really super famous now. And then he says, like, look, we set out, we had an agenda. We wanted to show 5 strong black men in a movie while they solve their own problems and the women stay with them. And it's like, okay, wow, okay, you did that. Yeah. Might not have been a success initially, but it's there. But it everybody.
And it is a cult favorite among our community, and so he absolutely achieved that.
And it's bittersweet. I mean, John Canada Terrell was there at the screening at the Riverview last week, and he was very emotional. But it's like, why don't we get more of that? Why isn't Robert Townsend working within the mainstream Hollywood system as much as anybody else who's been around that long? So I know we've got a minute left. So Michael Jackson conspiracy theory. I got permission from Michael to share this. Now, if you Google Michael Jackson Arab Sheik settlement, right, you'll see about 8 months before Michael Jackson passed away, he had to go to court. Sheik from Bahrain, Prince of Bahrain, has sued him for $7 million. Right. And because after his molestation charges, he went on like 19 months. He was living in the Arab Emirates, right? Yes. And originally he was going to Skype in for his testimony, but at the last minute he flew there, and before they could reach anything, they settled something out of court. Now, here's the theory. It involves DNA.
Come on, hurry up. We are literally out of time. You got to.
So I'm just saying, after they settled the court, Michael went off into the restroom, and it involved some DNA, and something was handed off to the Sheik. And forget about Thriller in 3D coming out later this year. John Landis, the 3D experience.
Lord have mercy.
20 years from now, these kids are in training now. We're going to have live Michael Jackson clones doing tours worldwide of Thriller in its entirety.
Well, I will take that as a point of information.
They're gonna fall from the sky.
Shush. I will say that we gotta go. I will say to other people, I hope you read the story about how Sony admits to using Michael Jackson impersonators on the album that they rushed out after Michael passed, simply titled Michael. Now he has a collaboration with Lenny Kravitz that I love. I Can't Make It Another Day, that I play very often. But 3 of the songs from that Michael album did not feature Michael's voice. They were Michael Jackson impersonators. Sony has got to pay up because of that. And there is much more that will come out.
Quincy Jones, in that same GQ interview where everybody said, oh, he's lost his mind, he said, that's not Michael's voice. So now you got to listen to that interview again and decipher that.
And just understand, Quincy was like, hey, basically, I'm old enough where I don't care anymore, and I'm just speaking my mind, and people want to say that he's going senile. Do not dismiss our elders so quickly. They have insight that we can't begin to understand.
20 years from now, you're going to get real Michael Jackson clones performing Thriller.
I'm not co-signing this.
Dubai.
I'm just letting y'all know.
You have to travel to Dubai first for it.
We got to go. But the last thing I will say is that for those of you who were trying to follow along with the Aretha Franklin funeral schedule of speakers and performances, that has now been tossed out the window. They were running late, and people have already been moved up in the program. So there's no telling who might not make it to the podium because they are an hour and a half late, or what order people will be appearing in now that they have tossed the schedule aside and are trying to get people on who are probably not staying till the end anyway.
Y'all really watching this live?
The live streams will continue to progress.
They're going to run out of tape. This is going to be on for like 8 midnight. It's clearly going to go beyond 3 p.m., which was the scheduled end. It's going to go on forever.
But you know, continue to share in the homegoing celebration, and we will continue to keep you linked here on wordradio.com. Brother Shamari is on his way in the studio for today's show. Keep your dial locked here, and we'll be back with more Real Black Radio next week. Peace.
Brand new filmmaker born every day. Put a camera in his hand and let him lead the way. Let me get an Oscar, let me get an Emmy. Real Black woke up the filmmaker in me. Whether digital, 8mm, 35. Let's make the movies that can open the eyes.